Hey, thanks for joining me. I'm going to be taking a look at the OpenWeather API today. This video is intended for somebody who's kind of new to working with front-end JavaScript and the Fetch API. And so I thought I'd use the OpenWeatherMap API. It does have a free tier, and it's a great example that we can use to kind of work through the documentation to figure out how to get some data. So I'm just going to be kind of doing this live, basically. This isn't scripted or pre-planned or anything. I have worked with this API before, but it's been a while. So I thought I'd just make this little video to show you how you could kind of explore an API and then set up an AJAX request to get some data from that and add some content to the page. I'm not going to be really delving into styling the content or making it look really nice. That's not the goal here in this video. I do want to try and keep the video on the shorter side of things. So I'm at the website for openweathermap.org, and this is their API. They have a number of different endpoints which provide you with different types of data. We can get current weather data, hourly forecast, which is not available for the free account. You have to have a paid subscription account. We have the one call API, daily forecast. There's a bunch of different things you can do with this API. There's a lot of nice services here. There's even a geocoding API, and that's available for both free and paid subscriptions. So I think for this video, I'm going to keep it limited to current weather data. What we're going to do is just have a little form and be able to search for the current weather in a specific city, and then we'll show some information about the weather in that city. So let's go ahead and take a look at the API documentation before we decide how we're going to put our little program together. So looking at current weather data, and by the way, if you want to follow along with this, you're going to need to create an account first and request your API key. And they have a nice guide on that if you go to the guide section for the OpenWeather API, where you can figure out how to get started. So anyway, back to the API documentation for current weather data. And it allows you to get the weather data for one location, either by the name of the city, the city ID, which comes from the OpenWeatherMap API, so you have to know that in advance. You can use latitude and longitude for geographic coordinates or by a zip code. So we're going to take a look at searching for a city by the name. So let's go ahead and take a look at some example API calls. So normally what I like to do right away is just get an API call working. I like to see if there's an example somewhere. So we can find an example call right here. That's exactly what I would like to be able to do. So they have one here for London. And then you can see that I'm supposed to put in my app ID. So let me go ahead and grab that in just a second. So what I like to do is just copy this. And I'll normally just open up some kind of text editor really quick and paste that in. And then I'm going to go open up my API key. I'm going to have to do that in another tab because I don't want to show. I only want to show the temporary key I made for this video. So I'm logging in right now off camera to grab my API key that I'm going to use for this video. After I make this video and publish it, I'll be removing this API key, so it should not work for you, so don't try to copy it. You'll have to get your own account, your own API key. So now I've plugged in my API key, and I have their demo URL here, which has a parameter of Q equals London, and then another parameter for your API key, which is app ID equals, and then you plug in your API key. And then I need to include a protocol here. So since this is going to be a front-end application, and if I deploy it to something like GitHub Pages, it's going to be over HTTPS, I'm going to go ahead and use that protocol. And now I'm going to copy all of that and open up another tab in my browser, and I can just paste that URL in, and that will send a GET request over to the OpenWeatherMap API, and now I can see what I get back. So we get some basic data. It looks like we're getting temperature. Judging by the numbers, I would guess that's probably Kelvin, but we can go investigate in the documentation. Looks like we're getting some kind of visibility number here. Wind speed, not sure what that speed, what kind of units are being used there. So we'll have to figure all that out in the API documentation. So I'd like to be able to display the units in kind of a localized format for the United States. So I'm going to be looking for displaying temperatures in Fahrenheit, wind speeds in miles per hour. So let's see if I can, there we go. So looking through the parameters, there's a couple we can use. We can use mode, which looks like it can give you XML or HTML, or by default we're getting JSON formatted data. And then units, so here we can see we can add a units parameter, and it looks like we can provide standard, metric, and imperial. Standard units looks like what we've been getting. So if I go grab imperial units here and add that parameter, so I just go back to my notepad and add another parameter. I like to keep the API key at the end. You don't have to do that, but I like to. So we're going to say units equal imperial, like so. And now I'm going to go ahead and copy that whole string and try it again and just see what our response looks like now. Okay, so we can see now the temperature is being reported as 47.55, and it looks like our wind speed is 11.5 miles per hour. And lang, let's see what lang does. So it's a translation for city name and description. So we can offer a language code. Let's see what language codes we have here. Just taking a look in case they have different variants of English. I can't imagine they would. For weather API, nope, they don't. Okay, I'm pretty sure the default is English. So I'm not going to investigate that any further. So I think at this point, what I'd like to do is just, I think, start talking about how we're going to make this app. So again, it's going to be very bare bones. So I'm just going to go ahead and make a new folder on my desktop. And I'm going to call this Weather API Demo. And now I'm going to use VS Code as my editor here. Going to go ahead and make an index.html page, and I'll go ahead and make JavaScript. I will call it index.js, because why not? Let's get some basic HTML going. Give our page a title, an H1. And then we want to connect JavaScript. And I'm actually going to move this to the other half of my monitor. And now we'll go ahead and connect our index.js file. Perfect. Okay. Quick format. Got our basic HTML. And now I'm going to go ahead and open this up using VS Code Live Server, which is a great extension. I highly recommend. And then I'm going to open up the console because that's what we're going to start off with. All right. So I think a common pattern for simple web apps that use API calls, it's really nice to divide your code into two separate functions. Code for doing the request versus code for displaying content on the page from those results. So I'm just going to make two functions. Function one will be, we'll just name it render weather. And then the other function will be fetch weather. And so I'm going to start off with just fetch weather. And we already know we're going to want to search by city or use a query at the very least. So I'm going to just call it query as the parameter. And to get started, we're just going to hard code in the URL I know works. So I'm just going to copy that to get started. So I'm just going to say var URL equals this string right here. And then we're going to be using the fetch API to send our requests. So if you go to Mozilla Web Docs, search for the fetch API, you can learn all about it there. I'm just going to go there to get a handy snippet of code to get started with. So if I scroll down, find an example in here somewhere. Let's see. Request and response, differences, aborting fetch. That wasn't the page I wanted. Using fetch, that's the page. Yeah, right here. Nice little example of getting a JSON response. So I'm going to grab that snippet to get started. And then instead of the URL for the example, I'm going to use my OpenWeatherMap URL that we know works. And now I'm just going to make sure that I'm fetching some data. So going back to live server here, let's see, we need to call our function. So we'll call fetch weather. And there we go. We can see that it works, and I have data for London. So now I can either work on connecting it with my query, or I could just go straight to displaying the results on the page. I think it would probably be easier right now just to, when I work on the function using the query later on, it might be easier if I can already display data. So that's actually what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go over to my HTML, and I'm going to create just an empty div with an ID of weather results. And that can be used as a container to display the results of my AJAX call. So now I can get a reference to that container. I'll just say var results container equals document.query selector, and that was weather results. So I'm going to write this function just to take our weather, and we want to just add it to the page in a few elements. We're not going to try and make it look particularly fancy. Maybe just use some p tags or something. Let's see what we want to show. We're going to show the temperature, the name of the city. See if we can get the name of the city. So I guess that would be name. Yep. So we'll display create h2 for name. We want to create maybe just a p tag for, let's see, what else do we want to show? We'll show the city, and then we'll show humidity, wind, description, humidity, wind, description, and of course temperature. Do we want to show the time? I don't think we want to show the time. And do we want to show clouds? I don't think so. I think we're going to keep it simple. So we'll show overcast clouds, main clouds. We'll see what we want to do with description. I may decide to take it off. We'll see. I think that's a good start though. And that's all we're going to show. So we're going to create our h2 var city equals, and then we'll just say it looks like it's weather dot name. So we're going to create an element, and then we're going to set its text content equal to city or weather dot name, and then append that. And now I'm going to handle the additional items here. So we're going to go ahead and create a var, let's call it info or details. And that'll be a p tag. And then we're going to go ahead and set its, we'll create a string for details maybe. Actually, we'll just use append. So we'll say details dot append. And let's go ahead and add weather. So we'll say, let's see, temp colon space plus weather dot main dot temp. And then we probably want like an indicator of what the unit we're using for temperature is. And then we'll go ahead and add details dot append. And we'll actually add, let's see. You know what, an easier way to make this might just be details.inner HTML equals, and that way we can just do something like this. No, actually that's what we're gonna do. We're just gonna keep it really simple here. We'll just do one p tag each. How about that? That's what we'll do. We'll just do, let's see, temp dot text content equals, and then we'll go ahead and append that to results container. We'll do it again. We'll make another p tag, so this one will be humidity. So that'll be weather dot main dot humidity, and then we'll put a % afterwards, and then a results container. We'll append humidity. What else did I say? Description and wind. So var wind. Basically start copying these. And each time to find these different properties, what I'm doing is looking over in my console over here, and just looking at this entire object, which is the weather object, and just kind of figuring out where each thing is. So I was getting main here, and then looking in and seeing humidity and temp. Now I'm looking for wind, which I think was on a separate, there it is. So it looks like dot wind. So it'd be weather dot wind dot speed, plus miles per hour. And then we'll show the degrees. Weather dot wind dot degrees. And the symbol for degrees. I think. Nope, doesn't come up there. Just Google it, degree symbol. Copy that to the clipboard. Thank you. And there we go. And now we can append when. We might as well, instead of console logging data, just call our render weather function. I still want to see data because I think we have a few more to add. So we'll console log weather up here, save it. So we can see we're starting to get some of our details here. So we got wind, temp, humidity, wind, and description. Where's description at? Weather bracket 0. So I probably want to do a check just in case it's not there. So if weather dot weather. Notice how this key is weather, but I name my parameter weather. So that's why I need weather dot weather. And then bracket 0. So we'll just check and make sure we have that. And then probably check and make sure, let's make a little temp variable. Var, well, I'll call this weather details. Will be weather dot weather bracket 0. That'll just make it easier to do this. We'll say weather details. And we want to make sure that we have a description. It may be that will always be there, but I'm just kind of being a little defensive here so I don't have to go dig through their docs, and they may or may not indicate in the docs anyway. And then we'll check for a description, like so. So if both of those things are truthy, then we'll go ahead and add a description. So one more time, just copy how we did it for wind, and then change that to, let's see, this should be, we'll just 0 it out. There we go. Change this to description. Okay. And then we need to set the text content to be I'm just gonna say weather details dot description, like that. And there we go, overcast cloud. So we'll just leave it at that. Now I'll clean up my comments. This code's a bit repetitive. I might consider just writing a little helper function that sets the text for a p tag, or just sets the text for any element. But I can do that another time. I don't need this last append here anymore. I think we're all set. All right, so now we have a little function that can render our weather. Let's go back and make it this dynamic, because right now fetch weather is only ever going to get London, and that's not that helpful for our goals. So what we need to do is take query, and we're going to concatenate it in. So for our little test function, I'm going to go ahead and pass in London, and then I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to delete London, and instead we're going to concatenate in query right here. Just like that. Format my code. And now we have our URL, and we're going to concatenate in our query first. So we can see that it's still working. Let's go ahead and change the city now. We'll look for sunny San Diego. And there we go. 70 degrees. Another beautiful day. Clear skies. So now all that remains would be to I could go plug in a form now if I wanted, or maybe I just want a drop down for users so they can only choose a few cities. There's a number of ways I could get what I want to search for here. And I could plug this code in very easily from here. I think I'm going to stop here. This movie's gone on long enough. Hopefully this helped you if you were working with the Open Weather Map, or maybe just wanted to see a live code example of how to work with the Fetch API. If you found this helpful, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Feel free if you have questions to ask in the comments. I can't promise a timely response, but I do check them from time to time and try to respond if somebody has any questions.